So on my last live stream every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central, the topic came up that basically I'm having trouble coming up with things to talk about when it comes to reviews, just because, well, I mean, there's only so many new movies to talk about. There's only so many new shows to talk about, and there needs to be something in there to fill in the gaps. And Rachel and Rafe both suggested that I do a review of Heat. Well, I started thinking, why don't I just do a new segment talking about my favorite movies? Doesn't have to be the best movie of all time, anything like that, but just my favorite movies. So let's do that. Let's talk about Heat. Now, with this movie, this is one of those that has been talked about in many different ways. I mean, just like from scene breakdowns to story breakdowns, all that sort of thing. What I want to do is I want to talk about the things that stick out to me, the things that I think are interesting, and yeah, it's less of a review and more about just me talking about some of the cool things that I learned watching this movie again. One of the first ones was that John Voight, who plays the character of Nate in the movie, who's kind of almost like Neil McCauley's handler in a way, finds him jobs and things like that. His character is based on the character of Eddie Bunker, who was a real life thief and, did time and all that sort of thing, got out of jail and started writing books, and he actually ended up in some movies. In fact, here's a picture of him in Reservoir Dogs as Mr. Blue, which I thought that was really cool. That I mean, even down to his haircut and everything, looks like Eddie Bunker. Kind of cool. This has always been something that's always been in my head when I watch the movie, but one of the more interesting characters to me is the character of Breeden, played by Dennis Haysbert. His character has recently gotten out of jail, and he's looking to get back on his feet, turn his life around, all that sort of thing. He gets this job in like a coffee shop, and basically nobody wants him to succeed. That's the thing about ex-cons, from a very human point of view, is that some of these guys get out and want to do the right thing and want to try to turn their life around, and yet they're met with trepidation. They're met with fear. They're met with basic look, I'm not going to help you in any way. And it's just one of those weird things about the situation, about our society. I think it's kind of cool that he kind of, Michael Mann, decided to shine a light on this. I think it's pretty interesting stuff. Now, I've seen this movie a lot, like many times, but I wanted to kind of focus in on some scenes that I thought were interesting, and I watched these again from an acting standpoint or a character development standpoint. And it's this one situation, this one scene between Justine and Hannah, where she's basically saying, you're a mess, and you're just this, you live with dead people, and the rest is just the mess that you leave when you pass through. I thought it was interesting because, even though Hannah's a good guy, he's a cop, and he's trying to stop Neil McCauley and his crew and others like him. He's trying to make the world a better place. But it's weird how their actions sort of have this wake, behind them. So even though he's trying to do the right thing, he's obsessed. He's an obsessed character, and from what I hear, a lot of cops, detectives, they get in this thing where it's all about catching the guy, and the rest of their life, the rest of the aspects of their lives, takes a back seat to that. And I just thought that was really interesting because it's almost like they're two sides of the same coin. Then I watched the commentary, and Michael Mann said, I hate it when people say that they're two sides of the same coin, because even though they have similarities in the way that they conduct themselves. They're both professionals. They, all this stuff, there's a lot of similarities, but the biggest difference is that Neil McCauley is a sociopath, and Hannah has a very, very distinct and active moral center. And even though he does some things where you might go, but for the most part, the guy cares, and the guy's trying to do the right thing and trying to make the world a better place. I found that interesting, but I still think that, there's almost a character flaw in Hannah. You know, it's very glaring the more you watch the movie. I also found it interesting, and this is one of those things where I don't know if I knew this at some point, because I know, I mean, the DVDs have been out for how long? I know I had to have gone through all the special features on this, but the fact that Hannah was based, on a couple of different detectives that Michael Mann knew, worked with, went on, you know, I guess tours with, you know what I mean? Like through LA and stuff like that. Chuck Adamson was a real Chicago detective from 58 to 74, and actually knew the real Neil McCauley that Michael Mann based this character on, and actually killed him in 1964. And what's really interesting is that the scene between Hannah and McCauley at the coffee shop, that's based on a real life conversation between Chuck Adamson and Neil McCauley. I just thought that was really, really interesting, and like, wow, I guess I just I either didn't realize or didn't remember that a lot of the characters that we see in Heat are based on real life people. I just think that's amazing. Now let's talk about the shootout. I mean, what can I say about the shootout that hasn't already been talked about? I mean, the fact that, they were trying to, one of the big things is that when it came down to the sound mix, they were trying to, minimize the sound of the guns, and Michael Mann was like, no, it needs to sound as horrifying as it sounded when we were shooting production. And I thought that was really interesting. And then of course the story that probably the story that gets tossed around the most is the fact that the Marines actually show the clip of Val Kilmer changing clips, because it's like a proper rapid military reload, and the way that he does it is so well done that, yeah, they show it to Marines. I think that's really cool. There are two moments of the two leads that I think are really, really interesting. And no, it's not the coffee shop scene. It's scenes where you get to see a little further into the I don't know, the minds of the characters, and it's the acting that's really it's impressive stuff. The one with McCauley, when he's just gotten off the phone with Nate. Nate's told him, "Hey, Wayne Grows here. I know you said you wanted to know, but I'm sure you don't care at this point." And he's like, "Nope, I don't care. Good luck, brother," all that kind of stuff. And then you see McCauley thinking, and you see him change his mind. And it's almost like, I've broken my own rules this whole time. What's one more? And that's almost like what I see him thinking. The other one is the scene where, of course, this is after Natalie Portman's character has, been in the hospital, right? And Justine and Hannah are sitting there, and he says, "All I am is who I'm going after." And then, she's basically, "Well, go if you need to." And he's like, "Okay, I guess. Yeah, okay, I guess." And then as soon as he gets out of sight, he runs down the stairs with almost glee, like, "Oh, it's time to play again." It's a really, really cool scene that it's always stuck out to me. It's that more than any other is that, yeah, this is where he's alive, and he's excited to get back to it. I just think that's neat. And I would say the vast majority of the characters feel really, really authentic. They feel like real people. And I think that's part of the reason why this movie is so captivating to me, is because from a character standpoint, they feel lived in. They feel like they have a history. They don't just feel like archetypes. They feel like real people. And it's really, really fun to watch. The one exception, I'm sorry to say it, I think the one exception is Al Pacino. I think that too much of his performance is, hey, I just won an Academy Award for Scent of a Woman. I should bring that into this. No, it to me, it's too much. It's just way too much. I mean, I think most people will agree he's a little overboard in this movie. Now, the whole motivation for that is that in an earlier draft, Hannah was a coke addict, but it's still too much for me, and it sticks out, in a way where it shouldn't stick out. The rest of the performances don't do that. They don't feel like, ooh, this is an actor trying to act. No, they feel like natural characters. I think that Tom Sizemore in this movie is probably the best acting I've ever seen him do. You know, he's been in a lot of different movies and he's played sort of, let's just call it explosive type characters. I think this is the most reserved that I've ever seen him. And I think it's probably my favorite performance that he ever did because, I mean, that one scene in the diner when, you know, De Niro puts Waingro's head on the counter and one of the other people in the diner looks up and Tom Sizemore just tilts his head and looks at him like, what are you going to do? And it's just an awesome scene. And I love it. I love that Tom Sizemore was able to put in a performance like this, you know? The music in the movie is pretty understated, but there's also the iconic bank robbery scene, right? The music is really tense, and it's got this the tension of that scene is palpable, but the music just adds to it, and it's really impressive stuff. And of course, in the big shootouts, the score goes away completely, and you're left with just the violence of that scene. It's crazy stuff. And it's also interesting that Moby contributed 2 tracks to the score, and it's basically both with the 2 characters together. So it's when Hannah is chasing after Robert De Niro to basically pull him over and say, "Hey, let's go get some coffee." And then at the very, very end, the Heat theme, I guess it's interesting stuff. But yeah, I like the music. At first I was like, you know what, the music doesn't really do much for me. But then it does. You know what I mean? It's one of those scores that's it knows when to get out of the way and let the movie just work. I thought it was interesting that the idea for the script started in the 70s when Michael Mann was doing, I guess, research for other projects, you know, kind of movie of the week type things. And, you know, he was going on these little tours with different cops, meeting with criminals and getting to hear their stories and all of that stuff. And it all inspired the script. And that he actually took about 40% of the script and made a TV show pilot called LA Takedown. I haven't seen that. And I kind of want to see that now. You know, I kind of want to see how that plays out and how that would have worked in a TV setting. I really can't see it, but it's interesting. The weird thing about Heat is that it's a very, very well-made movie, but it's not a flashy movie. You know, the cinematography to me isn't flashy. It's almost documentary style in a lot of cases. There are a couple of scenes, situations, you know, especially when Robert De Niro decides to shoot out the front of the car to try to take out the ambush. There's some slow motion and things like that. But for the most part, it's very, you know, on the ground kind of feeling. You know, it's you're a fly on the wall, and it's really, really interesting to see that. But at the same time, the 4K transfer, I got to be honest with you, I wasn't that blown away by it. There's definitely some improvements that have been made, but it's still a very, very dark film, and I almost feel like the digital version, because I own the DVD, I own the 4K Blu-ray, and I've watched the Blu-ray too, and then I've watched the digital version that's like on iTunes. The iTunes one has the most pleasing image to me. I'm not sure why that is. I don't know. Maybe I did something to my 4K player, changed some setting or something, but it just doesn't look as good as the iTunes does. And it gets so dark that my TV, you know, does that whole artificial darkening thing that the LG C2 does. And I don't know why it does that, but LG, stop it. So anyway, I feel like I'm rambling now, but look, I love Heat. I'm curious for those of you who have seen Heat. I'm sure that's probably a lot of you. Yeah, let's talk about it down in the comment section below. It is one of my favorite movies. It continues to be just a powerhouse of a movie. It's so good. It's almost perfect. It's not perfect, but it's almost there. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.